Hey everybody, Ben Goessling and Andrew Krammer from the TCO Performance Center after the first day of Vikings and Patriots joint practices. They got done about 90 minutes ago. Andrew, we saw quite a bit. We saw a lot of familiar faces. Garrett, Bradbury, Stefon Diggs. Others I'm probably forgetting beyond the main guys there, but we saw the two quarterbacks, one that the Vikings drafted and the other one that the Vikings were very interested in last year's draft. We'll have lots of takeaways on Drake May and J.J. McCarthy's days, but a number of pieces of news this week, too, that we should get to. The Vikings released Brian Asamoah, another third-round pick from that 2022 draft that gets released. We can figure out why. It seemed like that was probably going to happen, especially given the salary cap ramifications that came with a cut. But, Andrew, what did you make of that move when they do it as early as they did in camp here still?
Yeah, and Kevin O'Connell mentioned today, he said the timing of it, we wanted to do Brian a favor and getting him a chance to latch on to another team with camp still underway. But, Ben, it just reads to me like Brian might have asked for his release here.
Yeah.
Well, we don't know that, but to release a guy at this point it doesn't make sense for a team that could still have injuries. Any team can have injuries with the last few weeks coming up, but Kevin only said that we wanted to do him a favor at this point, which means Kwesi, the GM, who talked about and had a real deep connection with Brian, talking about his trips over to Ghana with NFL flag football and really representing his home country in a way that Kwesi loves to do as well. And so I could see them wanting to do him a favor, but you're right. The writing was on the wall for him. It just didn't seem like his future was going to be here.
No, it didn't. I mean, we've seen that kind of play out over the last couple of years. Didn't seem like there was a place for him in Brian Flores' defenses especially. And then if you have a guy like Kobe King on special teams now, it becomes expensive to keep a guy if he's just playing special teams and you think there's a way to do it a little more affordably. I mean, they were still signing linebackers today because Andrew Van Ginkel still not practicing. Kevin O'Connell said he's still dealing with a couple of things, probably training camp ailments. We saw him. He's here today. I saw him working out a little bit this morning. So the fact that they cut Asamoah when they did, when they need linebackers, I think your theory is a good one, that maybe they were trying to just help him out and give him a chance to catch on somewhere before in the scramble of final roster cuts here in a week and a half or so.
Yeah, and Brian's a smart enough guy that I'm sure he saw the writing on that wall that Brian Flores, his first summer, put Ivan Pace, an undrafted rookie, ahead of him. And ever since then, we just never saw Brian really latch on to this coaching staff and really climb the way up that you would expect a third rounder too. So quickly, Ben, you mentioned that 2022 draft class. There's two guys left.
Ty Chandler and Jalen Naylor.
Woof.
And Ty Chandler's fighting for a job right now.
Yeah.
So, they have for all intents and purposes, completely moved on from that class and may continue to do so in the actual accounting of the ledger if they get rid of Ty Chandler later this month. But, that class has been a bust. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat that at this point. I think the thing that you would say is the fact that they did move on from those guys rather than hanging on, trying to kind of manage optics. We've seen that happen in the past.
That's true.
Around here, and they didn't do it in this case.
Look, we're just looking to showcase Laquan Treadwell. Okay?
Yes. Mike Zimmer flat out saying that is a notable example of a time when that happened. But other pieces of business today, no Andrew Van Ginkel. Harrison Smith, Kevin O'Connell called an illness, but we did not see Harrison Smith at all today. C.J. Ham did not practice, though we saw him at the facility, and Levi Drake Rodriguez dealing with a little bit of an ankle injury. Kevin O'Connell called it. And, of course, Justin Jefferson still not practicing. O'Connell said probably reevaluated next week as they look towards, I don't think we'll see him in the preseason at all, but I don't think we'll see him in a preseason game, possibly his entire career, but
probably not.
He will probably get some practice work if they feel like he's doing better with that hamstring. I could see that starting to ramp up a little bit once they are done with the joint practices after this game next week.
Yeah, media fans have all been waiting to see Justin since July 24th. It was, 3 weeks ago, basically? He had that left hamstring strain, and we haven't seen him back out there yet. But Kevin O'Connell did mention he has been participating in walkthroughs, which we saw on Monday of this week. And for other injured guys, you ran through all of them. I wouldn't expect to see any of them Saturday. And O'Connell talked about this today where he said, you're going to see so many reps with the ones because it reflects our plan for Saturday.
Right, which means you're not going to see the ones pretty much at all on Saturday. So, we're not telling you what to do, but if the weather's nice, we don't have a lot of weekends left of the summer, we will have all of it covered for you should you have a ticket to the game that you decide not to use. Not that we're encouraging that, Vikings, but we'll have you covered in the event that you decide to do something else this Saturday when the Vikings backups take on the Patriots backups.
We might see Drake Maye out there on Saturday. It sounds like Stefon Diggs is not going to talk to reporters in his return here to Minnesota unless he plays on Saturday. It sounds like there's a chance Stefon plays as well. He has yet to play for the New England Patriots, and according to their media, does not want to talk until he does. So you might hear from him. We might hear from him Saturday evening after he plays, or we might not. But that's the typical Stefon Diggs experience. What did you think of what you saw from Drake Maye today, though, against that Vikings defense?
Yeah, and I want to be careful with this discussion because the immediate reaction was he looked better against that defense than we've seen J.J. McCarthy do the entire time. The reason I say to hedge it a little bit is because it's a different situation where J.J. McCarthy is practicing against a defense that knows everything that this offense does. They see it every day. They're extremely well prepared for it. So you see, it's hard to make an apples to apples comparison, but we do have to go off what we saw. Drake Maye, I think, was quick to make his decisions, showed his ability to throw on the run, showed his downfield accuracy, hit a couple of big plays for long touchdowns, including one where Mac Hollins punted the ball into the stands to try to fire up the Patriots in what he said was essentially a road game. Yep. So there were a lot of highlights from Drake Maye. I think J.J. McCarthy had some decent moments in 7-on-7, but missed a couple of throws. And a lot of the things that we've seen happen in Vikings practices, he had some of those same things today. So, how much of that is the fact that Maye played last year and McCarthy didn't?
Yeah.
It's hard to exactly quantify all of it, but I have to think that has some factor into the difference we see, at least the difference we saw today.
And you asked Drake Maye after this today, too, another point to that point about how this offense with the Patriots and Josh McDaniels and Garrett Bradbury has a lot of familiarity with Brian Flores. And both Bradbury and Maye today a little bit talked about how they game planned in a way that not everybody game plans for joint practices.
Right.
Like they wanted to come in here giving their young quarterback a chance and not be totally flustered by what they saw from Flores. So they tried to prepare in a way that I don't know if O'Connell was doing the same thing for the Patriots defense with J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think it's good to keep all of that in mind because we are certainly going to hear and read and see a lot about how these two look different. And these were two quarterbacks the Vikings were very, very interested in last year's draft. So, in fact, we've heard it, we've said it. If they could have traded up for Drake Maye, I think they would have done it. Ultimately, that price got a little high for them, and they decided not to do it, which is also a reflection on how good they felt about their other options, J.J. McCarthy ultimately being the one that they drafted. But, yeah, quite a contrast, at least today, and probably one that requires a fair amount of nuance as we discuss it. But, what we saw today, Drake Maye certainly had an awfully good day.
Yeah, and I was mostly watching Maye versus the Vikings defense as our colleague Emily Leiker was watching McCarthy, and I think you were kind of watching both.
Yep.
And from my perspective, I thought Maye looked phenomenal. The arm, the touch, the way he dropped in passes in a way that McCarthy still seems like he's working on in terms of that touch that we talk about. Trevion Henderson is going to be a problem for a lot of people. He was incredible against this Vikings defense. Stefon Diggs was a frequent target, obviously, because they don't have a ton of receiver help that's proven. But him and Demario Douglas were great in 11-on-11 sessions. And on the flip side, you could help with watching McCarthy. The Patriots writers were saying that T.J. Hockenson had a decent outing, and they said when we watch Patriots versus Commanders joint practices, Zach Ertz did the same thing to the Patriots. So they were saying it felt like, from a Patriots perspective, they're going to give up a lot up to tight ends this year.
Yeah, that's very possible that it will go that way. I mean, obviously, two teams that have veteran tight ends, they're knowing where to find holes in coverage and how to make things happen. I think for Hockenson, it's a good thing to see because there has been a little bit of this feeling of, what's his role going to look like? What's his rapport with J.J. McCarthy going to look like? So for him to have some production, I think is something the Vikings want to see because there are still a lot of those questions to answer, especially after he comes back from the ACL last year, should be healthier this year. But a lot for him to prove as he comes back in this first full year after that injury that he sustained on Christmas Eve in 2023. So good for him to have a productive day like he did.
Yeah, and I should mention, and we're talking about Patriots quarterbacks or these joint sessions, Josh Dobbs also coming back, another familiar face. John Parker Romo, the kicker.
Yeah, I knew I was missing a couple.
On the Patriots roster, but with Josh Dobbs, He threw a couple picks today that were not good. You could really see why maybe the Vikings were like, thanks, Josh, for the memories, but best of luck on your next endeavor, because he threw one to Dwight McLeather and he threw one to Jay Ward that ended the Patriots' number 2 offense's situational drill. Night and day difference from Drake May, which should be expected.
Yeah, it should. And part of the reason the Vikings were picking as low as they were in that draft is Josh Dobbs won them a couple of games, so it becomes a little harder to move up as far as they might have done otherwise. So
Thanks,
lots of butterfly effect sort of angles to all of this with the two teams that needed quarterbacks in that draft among the 6 that took quarterbacks in that draft and planned for these practices as good development, good coaching sessions for their young quarterbacks to come out of these practices. Kevin O'Connell talked about that a little bit this morning, that Mike Vrabel was one of his first calls for a joint practice. They, of course, were teammates briefly back in the day in New England. Kevin O'Connell brought the Titans in here 2 years ago knowing you were going to get a physical practice, a good test for this team, and the Patriots are practicing very much that way again this week. So we will have plenty of coverage of all of the day's proceedings in the Star Tribune. We will have our whole crew out here again tomorrow for the final day of joint practices, and then the 2 of us, as well as Emily Leiker, will be here for Access Vikings podcast as we share our takeaways and impressions of the 2 days of joint practices between the Vikings and the Patriots. So thanks for watching this video, and we'll have more for you among our Access Vikings digital crew tomorrow. So thanks for watching. We'll talk to you Thursday.